Hello everyone, this is the Module 3 review. We're in week 4, and as you can see on the screen, we are halfway there. We just have 3 weeks left. It's going pretty quick, isn't it? So, just as in the previous 2 weeks, I want to review some of the performance data based on Canvas tracking, talk about major themes from last week, introduce next week, and then just provide some announcements. So I've got here the last week's performance as far as time and views. I didn't see a lot of value in reporting the participation. Then I've got the 3-week average. As you can see, most everybody's doing really well. There is one student that doesn't seem to be spending as much time as they should, and I'm kind of seeing the result in the quality of what they're submitting. And don't, so if I'm not reaching out to you, it's not you. I think you know who you are. I really enjoyed meeting with all of you this past week. I know some of you didn't realize it was going to be sort of a behavioral type interview where I was going to give you situations and see how you respond. But I think you guys did really well. Most importantly, we were able to go back and forth, which you can't typically do in an exam. It's here's the question, here's the answer, move on. Here, I was giving you scenarios, situations, and asking you to refer to course material and how it would be applied. And I think that is like the deepest level of learning that you can go through that. And so I really like that. If everybody wasn't so busy, this would be things that we would be conducting when we had the scheduled discussions. But everybody's busy. We're making the best of a difficult situation or tough situation. So we'll come back to this in week 5. This week you're doing interviews with mentors. And I believe I'm going to try to do that in week 6 as well. I'm kind of like iffy right now how we're gonna handle that, because I would like you to at least be able to speak to 3 different mentors. But we'll see how it goes. I could maybe make myself available for one-on-one if that's what you'd rather have in week 6. But I think you guys, based on week 2 responses, you guys did like meeting with your mentors. So I guess at this point I just want to say, just please keep up the great work. You guys are doing a really good job. So this week, this module, we actually got into some of the standards and hazards and things like that and how to correct versus the first 2 weeks, which was really building the foundation of analytical approaches and how to handle an OSHA inspection. And obviously, in our WebEx discussions, that's what I really focused on. But still, as we go through, I'm going to keep building off of this premise. First one was bloodborne pathogens, and I talked a little bit about the pandemic, really focusing on universal precautions. If you know something could be infectious, but you can't readily tell, and you don't really know where it is, so there's either you can't test for it or there's a delay in understanding it, then you treat everything as infected. That's the only way you can really protect yourself. And when you get into healthcare settings and labs, it becomes very difficult because it's difficult to be 100% of the time aware and insulated from your environment. And so that's where there's more administrative and PPE than engineering controls. And then we shift gears and we got into ergonomics. And one of the things you guys were saying is fitting the work to the worker really stood out to you. And I agree, that's a good way to look at ergonomics, because sometimes changing the design of the work in order to make it less forces on the individual, less repetition, less awkward postures, just makes the job design better, which increases the worker's ability to be successful in it. Which is, for me, when I practice safety, I'm more about work first, and safety is an attribute of that. And that's where ergonomics kind of rings true, or is really kind of a solid attribute of my practice. Then we got into forklifts and material handling. We talked about warehouse safety. And typically, when we talk about powered industrial trucks or that standard, you're so focused on the aspects of the training and the inspection just with the forklift. But I think we really need to look at it from the aspect of the environment in which you use the forklift. That, is there a possibility, or why would they be nicking or banging into shelving units or walls or doorways or entryways, I should say. And that thinking of it more holistically, I think, is a better way, puts the safe use of the forklift in better context, because it includes more aspects of the environment. With crane safety and proper rigging design, that's difficult. It does require a lot of math. And it does require you to get out into the field and actually practice it and understand it. So I really just kind of gave you an overview But wherever you go, there may be some form of overhead or jib cranes, gantry cranes, and things like that. Just know, never move loads when people are underneath it. Make sure that that the equipment you're using has a rating way above what you're going to be lifting. I always say, try to use a safety factor in there, and then really think about the rigging, how it's being connected or held, because once it gets up and starts moving, if it shifts in the straps, it could fall out or actually damage equipment. Lastly, we talked about more of a broader walking, working surfaces, stairways, ladders, lifts, all those things, and about how environmental conditions can actually contribute to those issues as well. I mean, we know that we've got overexertion, sprains and strains from ergonomics, #1 cause of non-fatal injuries, and the most expensive. A close second is slip, trips, and falls. So we covered both of those. And when it comes to preventing slip, trips, and falls, I mean, you have to be constantly vigilant to the conditions of pathways, walkways, making sure they're clear, making sure they're not a slip or a trip hazard. When people working at heights, make sure that there are railings, guarding, or personal fall arrest systems. When people are using ladders, make sure they're selecting the right type, they're using them properly. There are certain performance requirements or rules of thumb that we had talked about. The 3-point contact, extending a ladder 36 inches beyond an elevated surface, the 4-to-1 rule, the belt buckle rule. These are all things that allow you to use ladders and working at height more safely. For this week, we're even going deeper. So lecture 16 got lockout tagout, which I already recorded and posted, and I like it. I think that's a cool thing, especially since we have access to the Brady materials. I think you'll really like lecture 16. Posing the lecture 17, I had some technical errors that kind of got into my head when I recorded it. Electrical safety is about an 8-hour discussion. Arc flash is another 8-hour discussion. And so how do you condense 16 hours of material into 25 minutes? You can't do it. And so what I try to do is just give you some basic ideas that the design of an electrical system, from the lines that come in from the overhead lines, if you want to call it that, or the underground, to the power center. It's the wires it's the lines that come out of the power center that goes to the switches and outlets. It's designed to handle electrical load, and is designed for a switch to trip or for a fuse to break when it's being overloaded. It's when we start plugging things in or extending things out that electrical safety really becomes an issue. And it's a build off of the lockout tagout. Machine safeguarding, that one I'll be recording here in just a moment. There's a lot to that as well. That's another 8 to 16 hour topic. If you really want to get into the specifics and applications, I'm just going to give you some general principles and talk about more of the current technology and where you can look to get more information. Similarly with the electrical safety. Lecture 19 is kind of a new one for me. I'm going to cover compressed gases. Basically, the standards that are housed under hazardous materials, but I'm going to also bring in some EPA and hazardous waste things, because it's something that's fairly easy to do, but if you don't really know what you need to do, it can become an issue. And then we're going to wrap it up with welding and cutting safety. And again, this is another one that could be an 8-hour class. I'm just going to cover the basics of welding and some both health, safety, and fire issues revolving around welding safety. So my announcements is that you guys are doing a good job. I'm actually, I wish I could spend more time with you. Again, we talked about in the WebEx, the 6-week condense is really difficult on all of us. But what you're being able to take away from lectures and relate to it is what's most important to me. So please keep doing that. We will be doing the course project. We'll be talking about it next week. I'll give the assignment, and then in our WebEx meetings, we'll talk about it. And I want to do a few behavioral questions. What I'll probably have is one from each lecture from modules 3 and 4, and I'm going to have you randomly pick a number, and then that'll decide it. And please continue emailing me, contact me if you have any questions. Everything's going, I'm very pleased with what you're doing, but please keep doing it. Because again, I am so concerned that we're covering so much in such a small amount of time. And I want to make sure that we're able to generate enough evidence of understanding, learning, and again, the course project will be a pure application and be able to review that. So keep up the good work.